Racist cop laughs after arresting black teen girl until the courtroom footage exposes him. They say one bad decision can change a person's entire life, but sometimes it's one unjust action that exposes someone for who they truly are. In the heart of Memphis, Tennessee, a single incident inside a dingy, fluorescent, lit patrol car shook an entire community. It involved a black teenage girl, an officer with a cruel smirk, and a moment captured on both body cam and courtroom surveillance footage. What was meant to be a routine arrest exploded into a firestorm as hidden truths were revealed and secrets no one expected came to light. You won't believe what happened when justice finally knocked on a forbidden door. The city lights of Memphis glowed in flickers across the quiet neighborhood. On this particular summer evening, a sticky heat blanketed the streets as the sky transitioned from dusky pink to a deep navy blue. Humidity seemed to cling to every surface. Locals sat on porches, fanning themselves with newspapers, sipping sweet tea, and hoping for even the slightest breeze to cool the air. Car horns blared sporadically from distant avenues, where day shift workers drove home and night owls prepared for an evening out. In the heart of this city, specifically along a street not too far from Beale Street, an unsettling drama was about to unfold. A 15-year-old girl named Ava Carter walked home from her after-school tutoring session. Ava was a bright student, enrolled in advanced placement classes at Booker T. Washington High School. She harbored dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney, an ambition that was hardly surprising, given her involvement in the debate club and her devotion to watching historical documentaries about the civil rights movement. She had even spent the past semester diving into old newspaper archives to research her own family history. She wanted to understand the journey that led her grandparents from the cotton fields of the rural South to the city of Memphis, and everything in between. On that fateful evening, though, Ava wasn't daydreaming about her future career. She was exhausted from a long day of school, followed by an intense hour-long tutoring session in calculus. A piece of paper peeked out of her backpack, with half-finished equations scribbled in pencil, and her mind churned with the complexities of the theorems. Lifting her gaze from the sidewalk, she saw the old street lamp outside her apartment, flickering an ominous sign, she later thought. But at that moment, it was just another inconsequential detail. She had about 4 more blocks to go before she reached her family's apartment. Her mother's shift at a local diner would end in an hour, and her father, an overworked truck driver, was likely several states away. In the hush of the early evening, Ava's thoughts turned to the next day's responsibilities, finishing her homework, printing out a speech for debate club, and possibly sneaking in some reading time before bed. That was when she noticed the slow creep of blue and red lights along the curb. At first, it seemed like any routine police patrol, a car driving by, scanning the neighborhood. Ava didn't think much of it, but the car stopped, reversed a few yards, and then rolled down the passenger window. A deep male voice called out, "Hey, you there, stop for a second." Ava paused, uncertain if the officer was addressing her. She glanced left and right. No one else was in immediate view on the sidewalk. She took a moment to steady her nerves. Her parents had always taught her to remain calm and respectful when dealing with law enforcement. She approached the cruiser cautiously, noticing the side panel, Memphis Police Department, in bold white letters. Inside the vehicle, Officer Hank Wheeler tipped his police cap back. He exuded an air of authority that seemed to radiate from his broad chest and hardened expression. He had been on the force for nearly 2 decades. Over time, Wheeler had earned a reputation for aggressive policing, which some members of the community described more bluntly as bullying, targeting, or worse. None of these rumors had ever stuck, though. The Memphis PD had bigger controversies, unfortunately overshadowing many smaller but still serious complaints. All Ava knew was that she was being flagged by a cop, and that it was best to keep her composure. Wheeler leaned over the passenger seat and asked, "What are you doing out here this late, kid?" The question's tone alone was not inherently vicious, but the way he spat the word kid made Ava's stomach knot. It felt belittling. She explained she was returning home from tutoring. Her voice was calm, respectful, and polite, as taught. She even mentioned her school, showing her backpack to indicate she was truly just a student walking home. For a moment, it seemed Wheeler was going to leave her be. He gave a curt nod and said, "All right, go on." Ava exhaled a short sigh of relief, stepped away from the cruiser, and turned back in the direction of her apartment. Then, inexplicably, Wheeler opened his door. The dull clang of metal rang out as he exited the squad car, and her heart sank. She didn't know why, but she had a terrible feeling about what might happen next. "What's your name again?" Wheeler asked as he approached her. Ava repeated herself and spelled out her last name. Wheeler's brow furrowed. He fiddled with his duty belt, which rattled with the clinking of handcuffs and a stun gun. Ava could see his narrowed eyes surveying her from head to toe, as if searching for some sign of guilt. She had never been in trouble before. Her record was as clean as her father's prized truck. So why was this happening? "Let me see some ID, Wheeler commanded. Ava looked perplexed. She stammered. In Tennessee, a 15-year-old wouldn't typically have a driver's license, and she didn't carry any form of state-issued identification. She explained that she was only 15, a minor, and asked if she could call her mother to come verify her identity. At that point, a sneer curled on Wheeler's lips. He turned the corners of his mouth into a half-smile, as though he'd just caught someone in a significant lie. Without warning, he reached for her arm, twisting it behind her back. Ava let out a startled cry. "You have no ID, you're out here alone, and you look like you're up to something." That was the officer's justification. She was confounded, but fear overshadowed confusion. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. "Sir, I'm just walking home," she pleaded, but Wheeler had already clamped one cuff around her small wrist. Despite her protests, he forced her other arm behind her as well. No reading of Miranda rights. No explanation beyond vague accusations. A cold dread settled in her chest. She couldn't believe what was happening. Neighbors glanced out of their windows or from their porches, but they were too far away to intervene. And Wheeler's car was parked in such a way that, from most vantage points, it just looked like a routine police interaction. Ava felt helpless. She wanted to cry out for help, but her voice seemed locked in her throat. She'd always believed that being polite and respectful would keep her safe. Yet here she was, her arms pinned, her body trembling. She began to say, "Please, you can call my mom, she works at," but Wheeler pushed her head down to guide her into the back seat of the cruiser. Pain radiated through her scalp as his heavy hand pressed her forward. He slammed the door behind her. Through the window, she could see him laughing, a genuine, hearty chuckle, as though he'd just performed a clever trick. She couldn't hear every word, but she noticed his mouth curl around what sounded like a slur. Her heart sank further. It was a word laced with hate. The next moments were a blur. Wheeler climbed back into the driver's seat, radioed in some code that Ava didn't understand, and the cruiser started rolling. She felt small, caged in the back of the squad car, her wrists aching from the overly tight cuffs. She was absolutely terrified. She attempted to maintain composure, reminding herself of the legal studies she'd read, but none of her knowledge told her how to handle a situation in which the person supposed to uphold. The law was the very one violating her rights. Within 10 minutes, they arrived at the precinct. The sign outside read Memphis Police Department, MPD, Crump Station Precinct. As Wheeler led her into the station, heads turned. Some officers stared as if they didn't see anything particularly unusual, a teen in cuffs. Others seemed mildly concerned, but didn't speak up. Ava was placed in a small holding room. Concrete walls, a single metal bench attached to the floor, and a thick door that closed with a metallic thud. She had never been in a police station like this, much less in custody. Tears pricked her eyes. She tried to remain strong. About 15 minutes passed before Wheeler returned. He entered the holding room, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. "You want your phone call?" he asked casually, as though offering her a glass of water at a restaurant. Ava nodded vigorously. "Yes, I need to call my mother. I need an attorney." Wheeler shrugged. "We'll see. First, tell me who you really are. I'm not buying this. I'm just a student walking home story," he sneered. She reiterated her name, her school's name, and even pointed out that if they called the front office of Booker T. Washington High, they'd confirm she was a student there. Wheeler scoffed, as though she was telling a tall tale, but eventually he motioned for her to stand up. They walked to the station's front desk, where a female officer with a kind but tired face was stationed. Wheeler barked, "We need to confirm the identity of this suspect. She claims she's 15. The female officer looked confused. She peered at Ava, noticing how small and visibly frightened the teen was. "She is a suspect." The confusion in her tone was evident, but Wheeler sent a sharp glare her way, which promptly silenced any further questions. Ava was handed a phone. Hands trembling, she dialed her mother's number. Ring after ring, no response. Her mother was likely still serving diners, and the noise of the restaurant might have prevented her from hearing the phone. She tried once more. Still nothing. Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she blinked them back. "I need to call my aunt," Ava managed to say, giving Wheeler the number of her father's older sister, who lived a few blocks away from the Carters. Wheeler nodded irritably, arms still crossed, as though every second was an inconvenience. Ava dialed her aunt's number. After 2 rings, a voice answered. Ava's words spilled out all at once, frantic and rushed. "Auntie, I'm at the Crump Station precinct. They say I'm under arrest. I don't know why." She heard Wheeler's mocking laugh behind her. Her aunt sounded panicked. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm coming. Stay calm." Ava tried to fill in more detail, but Wheeler snatched the phone. "That's enough." "She's safe here," he said brusquely before hanging up. Safe! That word echoed bitterly in Ava's mind. She was anything but safe. Before Ava's aunt could arrive, Wheeler escorted Ava to a temporary juvenile holding area. He stowed her away, scowling, and though she couldn't see him, she could feel his arrogance seeping through the walls. Ava's mind wandered. She thought about stories her father had shared, about small-town Mississippi law enforcement in the 1960s who harassed black farmers, turning a blind eye when racists threatened them. She never imagined that in modern-day Memphis, she might be reliving a taste of those stories. Ava's father, Reginald Carter, was no stranger to injustice. He'd grown up in a tough neighborhood, witnessed blatant discrimination in the job market, and had once even marched in a local protest after a neighbor was wrongfully arrested. Ava's mother, Linda Carter, was the type who believed wholeheartedly in the potential of the American system, but she also knew it was far from perfect. She'd always told Ava to be aware of her surroundings, to be mindful of how others might perceive her. "Stay respectful, but stand up for yourself," Linda would say, a gentle admonition. Now, those words pounded in Ava's chest, fueling her desire to stay strong. In that juvenile holding cell, Ava sat on a bench, leaning against a wall with flaking paint. She clutched her knees, hoping her aunt would arrive soon. She kept replaying the incident in her mind, trying to figure out what exactly she did to spark Wheeler's ire. The truth was that she'd done nothing. She simply existed in a place at a time that made her a convenient target for a cop with a chip on his shoulder. A short while later, the heavy door opened. Ava's aunt, Janice Carter, rushed in, accompanied by the same female officer from the front desk. "My niece is a minor. Let her go," Aunt Janice demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and worry. The female officer looked uncertain. She glanced between Aunt Janice and Ava, then said, "Monsieur A.M., we need to get everything processed. Officer Wheeler has filed a report indicating suspicious behavior. We can't just—" At that moment, Wheeler stepped in, crossing his arms again. This minor was found loitering past curfew without identification, he declared. She refused to comply when asked for ID. Ava's eyes widened at the lie. She never refused anything. She simply didn't have an ID to show. Aunt Janice glared at him, but Wheeler continued, "I have reason to believe she may be involved in petty theft cases reported in this neighborhood. We'll need to hold her until the matter is cleared up." Aunt Janice nearly erupted. "This is ridiculous. She's a straight A student. She was walking home from tutoring." Her words echoed in the corridor. Wheeler simply smirked. He made a half-turn and left, leaving behind a suffocating tension. For the next hour, Aunt Janice and Ava waited in frustration. The female officer tried to expedite the process by verifying Ava's identity with the high school, but the office was closed. They had to wait until morning. It wasn't even curfew for a 15-year-old under Memphis law, especially if she was returning from a legitimate school event. The entire arrest was illegitimate from the start. Yet the system demanded forms, clarifications, official statements. Bureaucracy churned slowly. Eventually, they got Ava released that same night, but only after tears, frantic phone calls, and persistent demands. As Ava walked out, she glimpsed Wheeler leaning against a wall, arms folded, a slight grin tugging at his lips. It was a grin that said, "I'll be watching," and inside her heart, fear still lingered. But also stirring inside was another emotion, righteous anger. That night, Ava and Aunt Janice arrived at the Carter apartment. Linda Carter was there, pacing in the living room, still in her diner uniform. She had rushed home the moment she got the message. She embraced Ava, eyes brimming with tears. "Baby, are you okay? What happened?" Ava recounted the entire ordeal, her voice wavering. She described the cruelty in Wheeler's eyes, how quickly he escalated the situation, and how he seemed to delight in humiliating her. Linda felt a surge of fury like never before. She had always believed the best in people, but this was beyond forgiveness. Before Ava could protest, Linda called up her lawyer friend, an old college classmate named Catherine Young, who now ran a small civil rights law firm in downtown Memphis. Catherine listened intently to Linda's frantic explanation. Immediately, she scheduled a meeting for the following morning. "We will get to the bottom of this," Catherine declared. "Stay calm, record every detail of what happened, and come see me tomorrow." Ava spent that night struggling to sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw flashing lights, heard the metallic snap of handcuffs, and saw Wheeler's arrogant grin. She couldn't help but wonder, was this a simple case of harassment, or was there something bigger going on? She also felt a creeping sense of dread, wondering if Wheeler might retaliate should she decide to fight back legally. Her father, Reginald, was on the road when he got the call. He immediately rearranged his route to come home, desperate to protect his daughter. Although he wouldn't arrive until late the next night, he left multiple voicemails for Linda and texted Ava words of love and assurance, "We will get justice. This is not right. I'm proud of you for staying strong." At exactly 8:00 a.m. the next day, the Carter family minus Reginald, still on his way, walked into Catherine Young's law office. It was a modest space in an older building with tall windows that overlooked a busy downtown street. The waiting area had a few chairs, a water cooler, and pamphlets about civil rights cases. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from a corner table. Catherine Young emerged from her office, a tall woman in her late 30s with a commanding presence, wearing a crisp navy suit. Her eyes softened as she greeted Ava. She put a gentle hand on the teen's shoulder and said, "I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Let's talk in my office." Linda and Aunt Janice followed, hearts pounding with the hope that they'd finally get help. Inside, they sat in comfortable chairs around a wooden desk stacked with legal briefs and manila folders. Catherine listened patiently as Ava recounted every second of the arrest. She described Wheeler's sneer, the immediate use of force, and the subsequent lies about her refusal to show ID. Catherine took meticulous notes, nodding with concern. "Did he read your Miranda rights?" she asked. Ava shook her head. "No, he just cuffed me." Catherine's gaze darkened. "And the female officer at the desk, did she witness anything?" Ava shrugged. She seemed confused, but she didn't stop him. Catherine pressed her fingertips together. "This is a clear violation on multiple fronts. A minor wrongfully detained, no Miranda reading, no probable cause. And if there was racism involved, we've got a strong case." She paused and looked at Linda. "But you have to be prepared for a fight. The Memphis Police Department might close ranks to protect one of their own." Linda squared her shoulders. "We're not backing down." Aunt Janice nodded fiercely. Ava felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. This was going to be a battle, and she was the central figure. But she couldn't let fear stand in her way. She wanted to do this for herself, for her parents, and for every other person who might have suffered a similar injustice. Catherine explained the next steps, filing a formal complaint with Internal Affairs, gathering witness statements from neighbors, and possibly pressing charges for wrongful arrest. "We'll also want to get our hands on any body camera footage from that night," she said. "It's standard procedure for MPD officers to have body cams running. Of course, sometimes they claim technical issues, but we'll see." Ava's eyes lit up. If Wheeler's camera had been on, it might show the entire ugly scene, his sneers, his remarks, his blatant disregard for her rights. The Carters filed the complaint within hours. They drafted a detailed statement describing Wheeler's actions and quoting what they could recall of his hateful remarks. They also included testimony from Aunt Janice about the phone call and the abrupt manner in which Wheeler had hung up. Catherine personally delivered the documents to the Internal Affairs Division of the Memphis Police Department. There, she met with a representative, a stone-faced officer who offered a standard reply, "We will conduct a thorough investigation." Back at home, Ava tried to return to her normal life. She went to school, joined her debate club practice, and worked through her calculus assignments. But the ordeal haunted her. Each time she saw a police car, her chest tightened. Meanwhile, rumors spread quickly. Some of her classmates, hearing about her arrest, whispered speculations in the hallways, some supportive, some critical, but all consumed with morbid curiosity. Ava did her best to keep her head high, but it was hard to ignore the stares and murmurs. One particular rumor reached her ear in the lunchroom. She must have been stealing something. Why else would a cop arrest her? The accusation stung. Ava realized that while her close friends knew the truth, the general student body was left guessing. She considered taking a stand, perhaps writing an op-ed for the school newspaper or making a statement at the next student council meeting, but she wasn't sure if Catherine would advise that yet. The last thing Ava wanted was for Wheeler or his supporters to twist her words. A few days later, AVA's father, Reginald, finally made it back to Memphis. The instant he walked through the door, he embraced Ava so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," he murmured, tears at the corners of his eyes. He was a large man with weathered hands that had held many steering wheels across countless highways. But in his daughter's presence, he was a gentle giant. That evening, the Carters sat around the dining table, discussing their next steps. A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. Linda opened the door to find a tall, slender man with a concerned expression. He introduced himself as Officer Leon Banks, also from Memphis PD. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. May I speak with you for a moment?" Linda's initial reaction was caution. "Another cop? Now?" She hesitated, but Officer Banks looked earnest. He said quietly, "I heard about what happened from around the precinct. I might be able to help." At Linda's invitation, he stepped inside and spoke gently, scanning the living room until his eyes settled on Ava. "You're the girl who was arrested last week by Wheeler, right?" he asked. Ava nodded, tensing up. He raised a palm in a calming gesture. "I'm not here to harass you, I promise. I've had my own run-ins with Wheeler. Off the record, he's been bragging about this arrest." A hush fell over the room. Reginald's fists clenched under the table, eyes narrowing. "Bragging?" he asked. Officer Banks nodded, glancing at Ava sympathetically. "He thinks he can get away with it because, well, you know how some precinct politics go. But from what I've seen, it was a wrongful arrest, and I can't stomach how he's boasting about it." Linda asked if he had any evidence that could help them. Banks hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "We're supposed to wear body cameras. He claims his wasn't functioning properly that night, but I believe the dash cam in his cruiser might have recorded something. If it was on, the audio feed might have picked up everything. I don't have direct access to it, though." Banks explained that if an official investigation was launched, which it was, thanks to the complaint, the Internal Affairs Division would request all relevant footage. The problem was that sometimes such footage mysteriously goes missing. "I just wanted to come here and let you know that not everyone at MPD is Wheeler," he said. "And if I get the chance to speak up, I will." Although Officer Banks couldn't guarantee a miracle, his empathy provided a glimmer of hope. He left them with a promise. "I'll do what I can on my end, quietly. But please be careful. Wheeler has friends in the department." Over the next few weeks, the Carters heard little from Internal Affairs. They grew restless. Was the footage being withheld? Was Wheeler being protected? Through Catherine, they learned that Wheeler had filed a counter-complaint. He claimed Ava was trespassing on private property and became verbally aggressive when questioned, and that he suspected her of petty theft. It was a web of lies that twisted Ava's simple walk home into a portrait of criminal mischief. Catherine remained steadfast, collecting statements from neighbors who'd seen Ava walk that route every day, as well as character references from teachers and classmates. But the legal process seemed unbearably slow. Meanwhile, Ava tried to maintain normalcy, but found herself waking in the middle of the night, anxious and shaken by nightmares of being thrown into a cell. She felt an intense wave of guilt at times too. Her family was sinking time, money, and stress into this legal fight. Yet Linda and Reginald reassured her daily, "This is not your fault. You're worth the fight." At school, her debate coach, Miss Harley, noticed Ava's distress. One afternoon, Miss Harley called her into an empty classroom. "Ava, you haven't been yourself," she said gently. Ava nodded, biting her lip. "I've been dealing with a lot," she admitted. Miss Harley had heard rumors. She offered words of encouragement. "I know you want to be a civil rights attorney someday. This experience, painful as it is, may give you more insight than any textbook can. Keep going. Don't let them break you." Miss Harley's words struck a chord. Ava found renewed determination. She decided she would do more than wait. She'd become an activist in her own right. She created a small group in her school called Teens for Justice, where students shared stories of police encounters, both good and bad. It started as a handful of kids meeting in the cafeteria after class. By the second week, it grew to nearly 30 students. They organized a letter-writing campaign, urging local officials to take misconduct cases seriously. This small but significant movement lit a new spark in Ava's heart. A month after Ava's arrest, Catherine received an unexpected phone call. A clerk from the Shelby County Courthouse reached out with news. Wheeler had to appear for a hearing on an unrelated matter, an internal dispute about misconduct filed by another citizen. The clerk hinted that in preparing evidence for that case, some relevant footage related to Ava's arrest might have turned up. Catherine wasted no time. She filed a motion requesting the footage be included as evidence in Ava's own complaint hearing. The hearing date was set. Ava's heart pounded as she, her parents, and Catherine walked into the Shelby County Courthouse on a brisk Monday morning. The ornate building, with its towering columns and marble floors, felt imposing, like the weight of history was pressing down on her shoulders. They proceeded to a smaller courtroom, designated for pre-trial and administrative hearings. Inside, they found Wheeler sitting at the defense table, flanked by an attorney from the police union. His expression was impassive, but when his eyes met AVA's, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. The presiding judge, an older gentleman named Judge Samuel Patel, took his seat. He had a reputation for fairness, a fact that comforted Ava slightly. The hearing began with Catherine presenting the complaint. On the night in question, my client, Ava Carter, a minor, was wrongfully arrested without Miranda rights, probable cause, or any evidence of misconduct. We believe the dash cam footage from Officer Wheeler's cruiser will confirm this. Wheeler's attorney, a sharp-faced woman in a tailored suit, spoke next. Officer Wheeler contends that Miss Carter was loitering on private property. He repeatedly asked her to identify herself, and she refused. Furthermore, the body camera malfunctioned that night, so no direct footage exists. A low murmur rippled through the few spectators present in the gallery. Judge Patel nodded. Miss Young, you mentioned dash cam footage. Is it available? Catherine replied confidently. Yes, Your Honor. We have reason to believe that dash cam footage was recorded that night and may have been submitted to the internal repository. Wheeler's attorney stiffened. Clearly she hadn't expected that. A brief recess was called so that the court clerk could confirm the existence of the footage. During this break, Ava caught sight of Wheeler pacing near the hallway, throwing furtive glances at her and Catherine. He looked nervous. This was the first time Ava had seen him without that smug grin. A flicker of hope ignited in her chest. When the hearing resumed, the clerk approached the judge with a USB drive. He inserted it into the courtroom's multimedia system, and the screen on the side wall flickered to life. For a tense moment, nothing happened but a blank screen. Then the dashcam footage began to roll. The date in the upper corner indicated the night of the incident. Ava felt her pulse quicken. The angle was from the front of the cruiser, capturing some of the sidewalk and the passenger side. Wheeler's voice crackled through the speakers, though the camera only partially captured Ava enough to confirm her identity. They heard Wheeler say, "Hey, you there, stop for a second." Ava's voice followed, explaining she was just heading home from tutoring. The sound was a bit muffled, but it was clear she was being polite. Then came Wheeler's sneering reply, "All you kids out here at night, no ID, no accountability. People like you never learn." A collective gasp rose in the courtroom. Catherine shot a triumphant glance at Ava's parents. In the footage, Wheeler continued to accuse her of lying about her name and made a derogatory comment under his breath that caused Linda Carter to place a trembling hand over her mouth. Next, they saw him shove Ava against the cruiser, cuff her wrists aggressively, and force her into the back seat. The camera also captured him returning to the driver's seat, where he mumbled, "Another one off the streets," followed by a low chuckle. Ava's eyes were glued to the monitor. Tears welled up, but she kept them at bay. The footage moved to the precinct parking lot where Wheeler parked. He exited the cruiser, glanced at the camera lens, and muttered something about those kids needing to be taught a lesson. The audio ended shortly after, but it was enough. By the time the footage stopped, the entire courtroom fell silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Judge Patel cleared his throat. "Officer Wheeler, can you explain this footage?" Wheeler's attorney stood, but Wheeler motioned her to let him speak. His face was pale. He scrambled for an explanation, saying that the suspect matched the description of a reported thief. But the footage betrayed him. Nowhere did Ava appear aggressive or resisting. Nowhere did Wheeler mention theft in real time. And his derogatory remarks were plain for all to hear. Judge Patel had seen enough. He directed the clerk to preserve the footage as evidence and stated, "This raises serious concerns about the validity of Miss Carter's arrest. We will proceed with further investigation. For now, I'm issuing a directive that Miss Carter's record be cleared of this incident." A wave of relief swept over the Carters. Ava nearly collapsed into her mother's arms. Word of the courtroom revelation spread quickly, thanks to a local journalist, Tricia Freeman, who was covering cases at the Shelby County Courthouse that day. Within hours, an article appeared online. Dashcam footage exposes officers' racism and unlawful arrest of teen. Soon after, local news stations picked up the story. While some older controversies in Memphis overshadowed such stories, this case had a compelling piece of evidence: the raw footage. The clips circulated on social media, fueling outrage. Calls flooded into the Memphis PD, demanding accountability. Community activists organized a small rally outside Crump Station precinct, holding signs that read "Justice for Ava" and "End Police Misconduct." Ava's story became a topic on morning radio shows, with hosts discussing the inherent bias that can poison a police force. At school, Ava received an outpouring of support. Her debate club friends greeted her with hugs and high fives. Teachers commended her bravery. Teens for Justice swelled in membership as more students wanted to be part of something that addressed real societal issues. Ava felt overwhelmed but also resolute. She realized that her fight had become bigger than her own experience. It represented countless others. Facing mounting public pressure, the Memphis Police Department held a press conference. Police Chief Andrew Reynolds took the podium, flanked by stoic-looking officers. Cameras flashed as reporters fired questions. Is Officer Wheeler suspended? How did the footage stay hidden for so long? Are there other victims? Chief Reynolds gave measured responses, stating that Wheeler was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of an internal affairs investigation. He expressed regret for any misconduct but stopped short of an apology. "We take these allegations seriously," he insisted, "and we're committed to a thorough review." Behind the scenes, Wheeler was furious. His career, which spanned nearly 20 years, now hung in the balance. He'd always managed to dodge accusations before, either through departmental support or lack of evidence. This time was different. The dashcam footage was damning, and the public outcry was too loud to ignore. Nonetheless, Wheeler, stubborn as ever, refused to accept responsibility. He maintained that he was just doing his job. As the internal investigation deepened, new allegations came to light from other residents. Stories emerged of Wheeler stopping teenagers for no cause, harassing local shop owners, and using racist language in casual conversation. While not all of these claims had direct evidence, a pattern began to form. A local TV station interviewed a former convenience store clerk who described how Wheeler would show up late at night, lingering around, seemingly hoping to catch a black kid doing something wrong. The clerk recalled, he always seemed disappointed if no one was acting suspicious. This, combined with Ava's case, painted a portrait of a man abusing his power under the color of authority. Wheeler's attorney tried to spin the narrative as a smear campaign, but more leads surfaced, including a partially deleted body cam file from 2 years prior, in which Wheeler used a homophobic slur during an unrelated arrest. The narrative was no longer in Wheeler's control. Pressure on the district attorney's office escalated, prompting them to consider filing charges. Amid this chaos, Ava struggled with a new internal conflict. Catherine informed the family that the district attorney was considering criminal charges against Wheeler, potentially for false arrest and violation of civil rights. If that happened, Ava would likely be called to testify. The idea of standing before a jury, recounting her trauma in front of the man who humiliated her, made her nauseous. She sat in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She thought about that first moment when Wheeler singled her out on the street, about the sense of helplessness she felt in the back seat of the cruiser, and the wave of relief upon seeing the dash cam footage that had exposed him. She had a choice: continue this fight to its conclusion, or settle for the relief that her name had been cleared. But settling could mean Wheeler might face a lesser consequence, possibly returning to duty someday. Linda, noticing Ava's turmoil, came into the room. "Baby, it's your decision," she said gently. "But remember, standing up for what's right has already changed so much." Reginald added, "We support you, no matter what. If it's too much, we understand. If you want to push forward, we're behind you." Ava closed her eyes, recalling her dream of becoming a civil rights attorney. She had always admired figures like Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley, people who refused to back down in the face of injustice. "I need to do this," she finally said. Linda and Reginald nodded, pride shining in their eyes. A few weeks later, the criminal trial against Wheeler commenced. The district attorney brought charges of false arrest, misconduct, and civil rights violations. The tension in the packed courtroom was palpable. News cameras stationed outside reported live. Community members attended in droves, curious to witness the downfall of an officer they believed had terrorized their neighborhoods for years. Ava arrived with her parents, her aunt, and Catherine. They took seats behind the prosecution's table. Wheeler appeared in his crisp uniform, technically suspended, but wearing it as a statement, no doubt to evoke sympathy. His attorney stuck to the claim that Wheeler had reasonable suspicion based on an alleged theft spree in the area. But the prosecution meticulously dismantled this argument. Witnesses testified to Wheeler's long history of harassment. The dashcam footage was played again, larger than life, for the jury to see. Gasps filled the courtroom as Wheeler's hateful remarks reverberated once more. When it was Ava's turn to testify, she stepped onto the stand, knees quivering. She locked eyes with Wheeler briefly, and her stomach churned. But as she began to speak calmly, clearly, and with a conviction that belied her youth, she felt power surge through her. She described the fear, the humiliation, the confusion. She recounted every hateful word Wheeler had spewed. The jury looked on with empathy, some even wiping away tears. In cross-examination, Wheeler's attorney tried to trip her up, implying she might have been skulking around suspiciously. But Ava kept her composure. She recounted her routine: tutoring on Tuesdays, the route she always took home, the time of night it usually ended. Nothing about that was suspicious. She never raised her voice, never resisted, and the dashcam supported her testimony. Just when the prosecution seemed poised for a decisive victory, a sudden twist occurred. A rumored witness came forward, someone from within the police department, claiming knowledge of a cover-up involving Wheeler. The witness insisted on testifying anonymously, fearing retaliation. The judge allowed them to testify in closed chambers, with only essential legal personnel present. That afternoon, the rest of the court was cleared for a private session. Ava and her family waited anxiously outside in the hallway. Catherine emerged after 2 hours, looking stunned and elated. This witness had evidence of Wheeler altering or erasing certain videos in the past. she revealed. They also had email exchanges between Wheeler and other officers where they used racist language and discussed targeting black teens. It's massive. Ava's eyes widened. Does that mean? She didn't finish the sentence, but Catherine nodded. This is enough to bury him in disciplinary actions and, quite likely, a conviction. He tried to hide evidence, but it's all coming out now. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Wheeler was found guilty of false arrest, misconduct, and violation of civil rights. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in prison and an additional fine. The crowd in the courtroom erupted in stunned murmurs. Many believed the system rarely held police officers accountable. But here, justice had prevailed. As Wheeler was led away in handcuffs, the same silver cuffs he'd snapped on Ava, he locked eyes with her one final time. The smug grin was gone, replaced by fear and anger. Hard karma had come knocking, and this time it was unstoppable. Ava felt a mix of relief and sadness. She never wanted vengeance, she only wanted justice. But seeing him handcuffed gave her a sense of closure. In the weeks following the trial, the atmosphere around the neighborhood shifted. People seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Several other officers implicated in the email exchanges faced disciplinary reviews. Chief Reynolds promised a renewed commitment to community policing, transparency, and mandatory bias training. Ava became something of a local hero, reluctantly so. Her story was featured on local news, and she was invited to speak at a city council meeting about police reform. Teens for Justice at her school blossomed into a broader coalition, partnering with community organizations and advocating for policies like mandatory body cam use and independent oversight of police misconduct cases. But Ava kept her feet on the ground. She returned to her routine studying, debate club, dreaming of law school. Yet she did so with a new determination. She had seen firsthand how the law could be manipulated and how it could also protect. She intended to become one of those lawyers who would protect the vulnerable. With the trial behind them, the Carters experienced a resurgence of normalcy in their lives. Reginald returned to trucking, Linda continued at the diner, and Aunt Janice found new pride in her family's resilience. The settlement money Ava received as part of a civil lawsuit against the city went into a college fund. Catherine encouraged her to use it for the best law schools in the country. Ava's eyes sparkled whenever she thought of the future. During a quiet family dinner one evening, Ava thanked her parents for their unwavering support. Linda leaned over and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Sweetheart, you never have to thank us for doing what's right." Reginald raised a toast with sweet tea to Ava, who taught us how to stand up to injustice and reminded us of the power of truth, and to many more nights where we can rest easy, knowing that justice can prevail. They clinked their glasses together. Outside, the summer heat was returning, but the atmosphere felt different, lighter, hopeful. Yes, there was still much work to be done in Memphis, but a powerful precedent had been set. On a warm Saturday morning, several weeks after Wheeler's sentencing, Ava found herself on Beale Street, the lively hub of Memphis culture. She listened to distant jazz from a bar's open door, watched tourists take photographs, and felt the pulse of the city she loved so much. She paused at a mural depicting civil rights heroes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ida B. Wells, and others who had fought for equality. She found a seat on a bench and thought about the journey she had been through, the fear, the anguish, and the courage it took to fight back. She remembered Wheeler's laugh, the way it had chilled her to the core. Now, that laughter had faded, replaced by the hum of a city awakening to change. She smiled to herself. Maybe, just maybe, her ordeal would be part of a much larger tapestry of reform. Ava closed her eyes, inhaling the fragrant air of a city that was alive with music, history, and hope. She had been tested, but in that test she found her voice, and she was determined to use it for herself, for others, and for a future where no one would have to endure what she did. That day, she walked home in broad daylight, confident and unafraid. The city was the same, and yet it felt entirely new. Ava Carter's fight for justice reveals how one courageous stand can pull back the curtain on years of hidden wrongs. Her experience proves that truth, fused with unwavering resolve, can spark real change even in the presence of deep-seated prejudice. If her resilience and the overwhelming community support spoke to you, consider how each of us can stand firm for what's right, no matter the obstacles we face. We hope this story resonated and expanded your perspective. If you want more content shedding light on true-to-life struggles and triumphs over adversity, we invite you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement fuels our mission to deliver stories that matter to a wider audience. Stay tuned for upcoming videos where we'll continue exploring powerful narratives of courage, hope, and transformation.